Hey, today I want to talk to you about something new that I think our students could benefit from, which is a fresh look at how our PLC builds parent and community partnerships. So today I'll walk you through the needs that I've mapped out for our students and our biology achievement team and what we do well, what I think we could do more to support our students as well. So I'll provide you with some research suggesting the benefits of parent and community partnerships in science, and I'll give you examples of budding partnerships and community interactions that we already have in our department. Finally, I'll finish this presentation with some suggestions for ways that we could start building parent and community relationships and plans of actions that we can use to make these ideas a reality. So I hope you all can keep an open mind during this presentation, and let's go ahead and get started. So as you know, teachers and administrators at the school are both under a lot of pressure to see our 9th and 10th grade biology students passing the course the first time. While our failure rate is not the highest in the district by any means, I think we can all acknowledge that some of our students that fail could or should pass, but they mostly lack engagement. And we can't ignore that some of our colleagues also lack engagement, which is hurting the ability for our students to be motivated. Additionally, I've noted other areas that our PLC needs to focus on, such as the fact that we are still struggling to fully implement NGSS. We don't hold our students to the high standards that NGSS expects, and that could really hurt us when we have those accountability tests to look at. We also do a great job of building college-ready skills that students can use throughout high school and higher education, but we don't really focus on connections to universities and careers. And I think that this is an area that we could improve to help meet our school and district's college and career focus. We have an increasingly diverse student population on campus, so I know a lot of us already do a lot to be culturally responsive, but I think we could revisit some practices that could help build our students' motivation this way. And finally, I recognize that we do have some communication with parents, but we could be doing more to engage parents in the science classroom, and so that's the focus of today's presentation. We do have a lot of supports for our 9th graders currently. Most of them are student-centered, such as tutoring and late work and test redo support. So currently we provide a lot of extra chances for our students to get help. We provide weekly tutoring in the library, intensive tutoring for failing students. We provide Talons regularly, which are after school, Saturday school work times. We provide extra tutoring after school and during our silent sustained reading 4 days a week. So this gives students a chance to catch up with more individualized attention, and it's pretty useful in improving some of the grades of our students that are struggling between D's and C's. Now, we also do have an excellent parent communication interface called School Loop. I know that all of us teach our kids how to use it. Most of the kids teach the parents how to use it as well so they can keep track of student progress. We send out mass emails about work deadlines. We send out individualized emails based on behavior and grades of students. We send out reminders about zeros and send out attachments for work in case students are absent. We have an administrator that her whole job is to focus on achievement of these students, so providing interventions for students that are at risk and providing remediation for students that have failed previously. I know we also work really well as our achievement team in mapping out the supports that we have and sharing individual additional practices that we do in order to help our students succeed more. So this is a lot of really good stuff that we do. And we do a lot much more than even this. We contact counselors. We talk to case carriers of our special ed students. We monitor our D's and F's regularly so that we make sure that we are providing enough support for our students, and we understand that having any D's and F's is just not good enough. We try to build connections to motivate our students. We put in way more time than we're paid for. We give our kids extra chances whenever we can. So this is the point of every PLC meeting we've had this year where we get stuck, because after we address all of these things we do, we ask, what more can we do? We do everything we can. And so this is where I propose that we need to shift our perspective a bit. We're doing a lot of great student-centered supports, but I think we need to step back from this remediation perspective and look at how maybe we could partner with other groups in order to help meet the needs of our students. So the purpose of this presentation, as you know, is to discuss a new perspective that we currently don't discuss in our biology achievement team meetings. So we'll go into more detail in later slides about a lot of this information, but I think it's time that we increase our parent interactions and involve our parents in different ways. Maybe we can develop a science night, develop interactive lessons for parents, utilize more funds of knowledge that students bring with them from their homes. And I think it's important that we also consider increasing our community support as well. So I'll discuss about how community partnerships can increase our connection to NGSS, college and career readiness, and cultural responsiveness. So I want to start off by explaining some of the research backing up parent and community partnerships. For instance, we do have a lot of academic research supporting parent partnerships for academic success and how parents can help. So Mull and his colleagues did a lot of important research on something called funds of knowledge, which I hadn't previously heard of. And funds of knowledge are the knowledge that students bring with them from diverse mindsets provided by other adults outside of school. As teachers, we can only influence students so much, and our relationships with our students are rather narrow compared to the influences and experiences that students have from others outside of school. So we can work as a PLC to build on these funds of knowledge and experiences that students have had from outside of school and hopefully help to connect students' knowledge outside of school to their knowledge in school and vice versa to help build their engagement and motivation to like science. Sheldon did a survey of research on parent interactions and literacy and provides a lot of evidence for how we can invite parent involvement in order to increase academic achievement in our adolescents. So he states that high quality and high performing schools have strong partnerships with their students, families, and communities, and parents do help support their students academically, but he also notes that they can boost positive non-academic factors as well, such as attendance and positive behavior. And I know this is something that we are really concerned with this year. We have a lot of students late to class or ditching class or using behaviors that are inappropriate, and parent engagement could help to mitigate these things. So Sheldon notes that parents are less involved in high school, but it's rare that high schools have interventions that help parents become involved. And it seems to me that if parents are less involved, maybe we should be doing more to try to involve our parents. Usually parents aren't involved because they're intimidated with the school setting, they're intimidated with coursework, and so maybe if we have more interventions that can help parents understand what's going on in high school and understand student success and expectations, we might be able to get them more engaged. Another suggestion for engagement of parents is an intervention called TIPS, which is Teachers Involve Parents in Schoolwork. And it's a method where students share work with their families, prompts, ideas, drafts of stories, essays, surveys with families, etc. And they found through research-based practices that students that complete more TIPS homework with their families had higher report cards, and their students improved their writing scores and improved their science success as well, regardless of where they stood academically initially. So we can use these activities in science to help boost science achievement, and this is something that I'll talk about later as well in my suggestion section. It's also been found that parents can influence the attitudes of their students related to science by engaging in science-related activities like taking kids to museums, science centers, nature exhibits, things like that. So if we can suggest to parents that they engage in more cool science activities outside of the classroom, they may be more engaged in science in the classroom as well. Now, I've also done some research on specific parent engagement for freshman science classes, and some interesting information that I found was that parent engagement, either at home or at school, has a positive influence on ninth graders' academic standings. And this is usually because students, when they have any sort of interaction with their parents at home, regardless of if this interaction is academic or if it's just goal-oriented, students do feel more skillful and motivated if their parents are monitoring them. I also found that parent engagement is more influential with ninth graders than it is with higher grades. So, especially since our biology achievement team focuses mostly on freshmen, this data is useful. And by engaging parents more in ninth grade, we may be able to support our students better. Now, I found it interesting that ninth grade parents are more involved at home than at school, whereas higher grades, the parents tend to be more involved at school than at home. And what I read was there was a desire for students to succeed, which is why they are really involved at home. But there are a lot of factors such as intimidation or a lack of welcome from the school that are leading them to not necessarily engage in school activities. They did find that low socioeconomic status, minorities, immigrants, and less educated parents were less likely to be engaged in school activities when their students were freshmen, but all demographics equally participated in home involvement, which was pretty surprising and also really useful for us to understand. A lot of times we may say that parents aren't engaged at home, but clearly through research, they are equally engaged at home regardless of their socioeconomic status, their race, their ethnicity, their culture, whatever. Now, one of the most important things that I read was that invitations from teachers were the best motivators for parents to get involved. So if we do want to involve parents in our classrooms, we should be actively inviting them in. And a lot of times they have a huge response rate to this. In addition to parent partnerships, there's a lot that we can understand about community engagement. So if you're not really familiar with any sort of community engagement, Sanders provides a lot of really good information about it. So there are lots of different reasons why community-based partnerships are influential, such as increasing the efficacy of a school through increasing school supplies, through increasing funding for certain things, increasing resources for populations that we couldn't maybe provide for ourselves. Community partnerships may be beneficial because community members can come in and train, essentially, excuse me, that's the bell, of course. So community partnerships can also be effective because we can train our next workforce with the help of community partners. The well-being of students is also one reason why community-based partnerships are beneficial. There's a lot of community-based organizations that help ensure that basic needs of students are met, such as on our campus we have United Way, which is an organization that helps provide food and clothing and school supplies for students in need. And additionally, community partnerships are beneficial because if we really get into the partnership as a school, or with our science students in particular, we can actually help to benefit the community. We can do volunteering, we can do beautification projects, etc. Now, there are lots of different kind of partnerships that we need to make sure that we include to be well-rounded with our community. So there are obviously student-centered partnerships where community services can provide tutoring, field trips, etc. There's family-centered partnerships which can provide things like family nights, counseling, health services. There's school-centered partnerships which can provide classroom assistance and materials being donated. And then there's community-centered partnerships in which the school and the students provide services for the community, such as volunteering and outreach and performances. And so I think if we are going to build more community engagement in our PLC, we need to consider all of those. There are lots of different partners that we can engage with. So businesses, universities, service learning partners like our ROP program, school-linked service integration, and faith-based partnerships as well. And there's a lot of science-specific research about community engagement. So one study I read mentions very clearly that often the school science curriculum doesn't fit with the activities that our students participate in outside of school. And I really see this fitting very well with the way that we currently run our biology classes. We talk about what we need to talk about in regards to life science, but there's still oftentimes a lack of connection to the outside world. And this disconnect is probably what's leading to the lack of engagement in our classrooms. So if we can build more connected science lessons, we may be able to bridge their community with what they're learning in school and help them not only become more academically successful, but also be more successful as citizens of their community. So one study suggested that students identified pollution in a nearby community area, and they work together to do this very interdisciplinary project, engaging in English, math skills, science skills, and civic skills as well, to really make a well-rounded unit about pollution and their environment. So I also did some research on field trips. Field trips are still noted as a great way to build community interactions, but we need to make sure that these field trips are integral to our curriculum. So we can't just, pick a day that we want to go to the zoo. We really need to make sure that we're focused on how we can connect it to NGSS. And finally, I learned a little bit more about service learning initiatives. If we are going to go full throttle with our community partnerships, we may want to consider involving our students in some volunteering activities or any other service activities related to science. And studies have shown that it can improve students' academic outcomes, which we're obviously concerned with, as well as their civic responsibility, their self-esteem and efficacy, and their ability to make career choices, which really fits in with the vision and mission of our school and district. So these community partnerships can really be very beneficial. So as important as research is to promoting parent and community partnerships, and hopefully has convinced you of their usefulness, it's also important to remember that we do have teaching standards that are highly and heavily emphasizing and encouraging these critical partnerships. So first of all, the California Standards for the Teaching Profession, which we are evaluated on, expects us to value and respect students' families and appreciate their roles in student learning. It also expects us to develop an understanding of families' diverse backgrounds, engage them as resources and funds of knowledge in students' strengths, interests, and needs. It expects that we present educational programs to all families and that we provide opportunities for families to participate in the classroom and in the school community. So these are things that we are, as I said before, evaluated on, and we need to make sure that we are actually critically looking at the parent and community component. In addition to these standards, this year I've been working on my master's program, and I've been heavily engaged with the National Board 5 Core Propositions as part of the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards. And of the 5 core propositions, all of them really apply to building parent and community partnerships, but the 3 that I have on this slide, Prop 1, 4, and 5, connect the most. As teachers, we are committed to our students, which sometimes means that we need to reflect on our practice, we need to learn from what we've already done, and we need to look for new ways to engage our students and help them succeed. And as members of professional learning communities, we should be working together as a team to seek resources outside of our realm, such as members of the community and parents, to also support our students. Now, I delved a little bit deeper into the standards. The National Board standards are also broken down by subject and grade level, and so the science-specific standards also have a lot of detailed recommendations for participating with parents and community. So as teachers, we need to understand that building these partnerships will be challenging, but we have to overcome these challenges for the sakes of our students. What do we have to lose at this point, right? We know that our students are struggling. Let's find some new ways to help engage them. So the National Board Professional Teaching Standards suggested a lot of specific interactions that teachers can build with their community. So there are lots of suggestions, such as drawing on resources from local scientists and experts, such as farmers, vets, our local water district, which I'll discuss later, museums, zoos, to get students interested in science. They also encourage that our students communicate with the community about science as well. So they may discuss stuff with family, with neighbors, even policymakers, that they create opportunities to show relevance to community experiences. So some things that I've brainstormed was we could offer opportunities for our students to learn about recycling more, or we could learn about ecology through random sampling. We could go up to the Etiwanda Preserve and we could get them connected with the community that way. It's also important that we build partnerships with universities so that students have opportunities to visit labs, have the university professors visit classes, for students to do some research as well, and this could be very beneficial for both the academics at the university as well as for our students, and it connects well to our mission and vision at our school. We can encourage work with younger students. So we can hopefully build interactions with our feeder middle schools and maybe showcase projects between the two during a science night. And it's very important that we provide opportunities for our students to be good science citizens. And so providing them opportunities to volunteer at hospitals or with city cleanups is also important and does engage them in science in a different way. Currently, we have a lot of cool partnerships going on at Etiwanda, and so I'm going to roll through these really quickly so that you understand some of the things that our school already does, and hopefully help you brainstorm some ideas of how we can improve our interactions in our biology PLC. So Ms. Vargas, the geology teacher, she has the Geology 101 program. She's worked heavily in the past couple years with CSU San Bernardino to get this program going, where students take the course with Ms. Vargas and they sometimes go do lab work with the university, but they are getting lab credit for a course as long as they meet the requirements. They get lab credit at the university and at our high school. We have Mr. Edwards and Ms. Lewis doing the environmental science component of our science department, and they've interacted in the past with the Inland Empire Resource Conservation District, the IERCD as it'll be referenced later, and they have done cool projects like trout in the classroom or building bird boxes in the past. They've worked with the city of Rancho before, which is a very important interaction that the students are actually working with their city, and they've gone to places like farm and ag centers and the farm at Fairplex to learn a lot more about sustainable practices and working with actual community members. And a lot of these programs that the environmental science classes have done are funded through grants that these community-based organizations they offer because they're looking for outreach with schools. So there's a lot of ways that we can outreach to schools or to our community. The anatomy and physiology teacher, Miss Haggerty, she is partnering with the Inland Empire Health Coalition to provide field trips for her students to medical institutions and facilities, to give them opportunities for workshops after school and on the weekends. And what this coalition does is it invites students to learn more about health-based careers, not just by learning anatomy content, but also by learning soft skills. So this is another great way to connect not just to content, but also to career readiness. And then, of course, we have lots of great regional competitions that our clubs participate in. And not only do these students get to learn about other students from other schools in their community, but they also get to network with a lot of great adults and professionals that are integrated with these programs like Robotics and Science Olympiad. So we have a lot of great stuff going on at the school already. And I know that we can use some of the knowledge that these teachers have to build our own community partnerships as well. In addition to this, if you guys remember, we've had a lot of meetings this semester, department meetings about building new courses. So I've heard a lot of us talking about marine biology, oceanography, forensics, maybe even specific semester courses like entomology and microbiology. There's a lot of courses that would be so amazing for us to offer, would be way more impactful for students in a way than just normal prep biology or normal chemistry. And we would get high enrollment. But it's also really important that we think about how this new curriculum that we have to build could be reinforced with community interactions. So working with universities would be essential, working with medical institutions, working with criminal justice institutions. If we really want to get these courses to be as meaningful for students and as engaging for students as they can be, we'll need to work with the community. So this is something that is really serious and something that we need to consider. So now I want to talk you through my experience with the Cucamonga Valley Water District. This is a partnership that I am currently working to build, and I've been working on it with my honors classes, but I would love to see it built more thoroughly with our regular prep biology program as well. So it all started back to school night this year. I had a parent who's an environmental science professor who just wanted to be engaged in his son's classwork, and I was like, okay, well, we'll see what we can do. And I honestly forgot about it until he emailed me in December. He had taken his undergrads to see the Cucamonga Valley Water District, and he said it was a great field trip, and he connected me with the community outreach coordinator, which I would have never thought to connect with otherwise. And we set up this really easy field trip. We went, I took my honors bio kids about a month ago, and here's my experience. So here are some pictures that I took while we were on our field trip. The top picture on the left-hand side is of a jar test, which is how they test the amount of flocculant that they need to put in their water as they're treating it. And so my students got to watch the water district lab technician do the jar test, and he talked with them about the jar test. The other two pictures are of a classroom that they have on the water district campus, where it's typically elementary school kids that go to these events, but the community outreach organizer, which you can see in the bottom picture, she was able to really tailor it to our high school honors students, which is amazing. But as you can see here, my students were really enjoying being back in elementary school. There were plenty of chairs for them, but they all wanted to be on the carpet and be really engaged. It was quite adorable to see how engaged they were in this field trip. Here's more pictures of the water treatment plant tour. So there's a lot of pictures of them looking at untreated water. The bottom middle picture is of them in the lab watching the jar test. The top middle picture, they're looking out onto the big facilities that do a lot of the big filtering of particulates. And so it was just a really great experience for the students to get out of the classroom for a day. Now, if I had a chance to improve this interaction in the future as a part of building community interactions, it's important that we reflect on what's happened. And so some things that I would like to see happen in the future with this is that more information from the field trip needs to be imparted in the projects that I assign my students. So this year I really didn't know much of what they were going to be experiencing on the field trip, so I didn't incorporate it into their human impact projects that they were working on. But next year I will definitely require that my students do put information from the tour in their projects. I am also working on a request to make the jar test section of the field trip something that's more interactive for students. Because NGSS requires that students do a lot of experimental design and a lot of analysis with experiments, I think it's important that they're part of an experimental process. So maybe they could design a question relating to how much flocculant is required in each water solution. Maybe they could predict the data, because the jar test takes about 30 minutes. They could predict what they think will happen. And then maybe they could actually measure numerical data about the amount of flocculant in each jar and assess which amount is best. So actually doing a lab experiment, I think, would be also beneficial and engaging for the students. And of course, there's always ways that I could ask my community outreach coordinator to build in more honors biology related material, such as microbiology, connections, and essentially this could be applied not just to biology but chemistry classes too. So we've seen how a lot of our elective classes incorporate community involvement. Maybe our core classes like biology and chemistry could incorporate more community involvement as well. So our community outreach coordinator, Joanna Gonzalez, was amazing, and if we wanted to build any partnerships with the CVWD in the future, she's a very, very professional person to communicate with, and she is very good about getting back to you if you have questions. So after the field trip, I contacted her and I asked her about some of the other services that she might be able to provide for us as Etiwanda High School or as the biology department. She suggested one thing was a tour or trip of on their other campus. They have something called the Frontier Project, which is a state-of-the-art, eco-friendly building that has a lot of sustainable parts to it that we don't see in other buildings in our community. And so our students could go observe that and see how we are working on building solutions for sustainable practices in the future. She also suggested a lot of scholarships to me through the Water Education Awareness Committee, such as the Water Scholar Program. And she also mentioned that they have a broadcast media contest, and all of these things are related around water. So as long as students can apply this to their knowledge of water, human impacts on the waterways and watersheds, these are all great scholarships for them. She also suggested that there are grants for teachers that we can all use if we design water-related projects, and since the standards require us to discuss the water cycle as a biogeochemical cycle and human impacts on our waterways, we could definitely build something where we could use this grant for good use, maybe field trips, projects, or other activities. She also was going to put me in contact with the Inland Empire Resource Conservation District. So there's a SLUIS program which I'll discuss. The SLUIS program is a environmental stewardship program for high school students. They work with outside community members to create cool projects like building greenhouses or composting food waste, or making natural sustainable pollinating areas, or adding in natural predators to attract prey to them, so that we are monitoring the amount of pests in certain resorts where they have no-kill policies. They do a lot of great work, and since it is geared toward high schools, it might be a really cool thing for us to think about. And she also mentioned other field trip opportunities related to the Santa Ana watershed and ecology as well. So I got a lot of wonderful information from her that we could use. So getting back to the whole topic of this is planning. What kinds of science resources could we build from? What kind of community resources could we partner with? And so obviously I think ideal choices would be working with the Inland Empire Resource Conservation District, the SLUIS program specifically, working with the Cucamonga Valley Water District, working with Joanna Gonzalez to create more field trip ideas, to create more engagement with the water district, and so our students learn more about water conservation and sustainability. I also think it's important that we communicate with some universities as well, and start maybe building programs for our students based on college and career readiness there. And I also feel that it's important that we start working more with our feeder middle schools. So since our district is a high school only district and we don't really interact with our middle schools, it puts us in a really awkward place where we don't know where our students are coming from, we don't know what kind of education we've had, and we don't really have a way to communicate with our feeder schools to learn more about this. So I think essentially one of the first community partnerships we should be building is with a middle school that feeds into our high school. So we do learn where our students are coming from. We do learn the curriculum that they are being exposed to when they're in middle school. And hopefully we can sort of influence each other in the kinds of curriculum that we build, develop, and introduce to our students. Maybe if we express that students need certain skills when they're a freshman in biology, maybe their middle school can start providing more of those skills to them. So I really think that communicating with our middle schools is going to be a great place to start. Now, as far as building community partnerships, it's going to be really important as we go through this process that we make sure that when we're communicating with community members that we have a shared vision in mind, that we understand what our goal is, that our goal is for our students to interact more with NGSS. We want our students to be more engaged. We want our students to be more college and career ready, and that we do communicate clearly defined roles and responsibilities with each other. And we need to make sure that we're communicating often and openly with each other. These partnerships are not going to get off the ground if we're only talking to each other once every 2 months. So we really need to make sure that we're engaging in communication. We also need to make sure that we have backup from our administration. So we really need to make sure that Dawn, our principal, is on board with this and is willing to help us out with what we're going to need. We're going to need to be flexible. We're going to need to understand that this is a big time commitment. We're going to need to be able to communicate and reflect on these experiences. And we're going to need to stay positive, because sometimes it's going to be a bit challenging to get these things moving in a successful way. But I really think that we are spending a lot of time outside of school anyways, remediating our students because of their lack of engagement. So maybe we'll just be spending our time in a different way, providing different experiences, and in the long run, we won't need to spend as much time on remediation. So my plan of action is that we need to have teamwork right away. We've had some struggles this year being on the same page as far as our expectations for our students and our expectations for the standards. But I think we really need to be on the same page with this if it's going to go anywhere, and we need to make sure that we communicate with administrators as soon as possible. We need to map our current science partnerships. I've already done that for us. We just need to talk to these people and see if there's any way we can piggyback off of some of their ideas as well. We need to go through and analyze the NGSS standards so that we can identify ways that we could effectively partner with our community and also support the NGSS standards. And we need to start contacting any sort of resources we can. I've already got a few connections that I've mentioned before, and we can use those as a good starting point and build from there. I think it's important also that we start small. This can be very overwhelming, and so starting small, maybe one parent interaction, maybe one community interaction in the first semester and reflecting from there is a wonderful place to start. We definitely need to make sure we're measuring any sort of engagement that we see in our students, start measuring their academic achievement as well, and see if that has any correlation to our partnerships that we've created. And we need to make sure that we're reflecting on this, but most importantly, that we're not giving up. This is really important, and I think it's not something that we're going to see immediate success in within the first year. It's going to have to be a process that we build. As far as working with parents, there's a lot of ways that we can work with parents as well to build partnerships. There's a lot of basic ways that we can work with parents to help them understand the supports they can provide at home, making sure that we communicate regularly, which I know we do through School Loop, giving them opportunities to volunteer as well, so inviting them to volunteer, providing ways for them to engage with their students at home, help their students learn at home and engage in those interactive assignments with them, and then also at a school level, inviting them to engage in school policies as well. So some of the plans of action, some of the ideas I have for how we can implement parent partnerships include at freshman orientation. We not only need to discuss, here, make sure that they get these supplies, make sure that they're doing homework every night. We also need to talk to them about ways that they can help their students engage in science. Maybe describe those mini field trips that they can take their students to a museum or to a nature preserve or watch Planet Earth with them on the weekends or something like that. But explaining to them that student success in science is also a result of engagement in science at home. I think an excellent idea would be to try a science night. It could be a high school only science night, or it could involve feeder elementary and middle schools, but either way I think it would be an excellent opportunity to invite parents in, do science activities, allow students to present some of the work they've done throughout the semester. I think it would be a really interesting and engaging way to see who's interested in science and what more we could do to engage our students further. I'm also really, really excited about interactive assignments, and I think we could build really cool interactive assignments for families to work on at home in our genetics unit, in our ecology and environmental practices unit, our diet unit, and I think we could also invite parents to, take their kids on field trips. I've offered extra credit before if students have gone on science-related field trips or seen science-related movies, and oftentimes they go with their parents. They have a wonderful, beautiful day. So it builds those family relationships, but it also can build their engagement in science. And finally, I think it's important that we build on the funds of knowledge that students have from home. Maybe we learn about stuff that they do with their parents on the weekends, and maybe we figure out how to connect that in and help them build more science-related engagement at school and at home. So this is it. This is the final slide here. It's time for us to brainstorm. I know we can all find reasons why building partnerships is difficult and time-consuming and energy-consuming, but I still encourage all of us to work together to find something new for our kids. I end this presentation with an invitation to start brainstorming ideas. Let's consider some homework for us all over the summer. While we are cleaning our classrooms, while we're organizing all of our work from the year, while we are planning for next year, let's consider some ways that we can build more parent and community partnerships. So I've presented you a lot of ideas that I have for parent and community partnerships. If we want to use those, great. If you find other ones, I would love to hear them. I think as a team, it's very important that we meet before the end of the summer, communicate our ideas, talk about what knowledge we already have and what we can use. But I think ultimately, together as a biology achievement team, we are stronger. When we work together and when we bring in ideas with our students in mind, we can really make this team grow, and we can make our student engagement, involvement, and academic success grow as well. So I look forward to seeing what we can do as a team to build parent and community partnerships, and I look forward to seeing the success of our students in the future.